Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Soul Method podcast. Today, we are talking about boundaries, healthy relationships, and how to never have your boundaries crossed in a relationship again. If you've ever felt kind of icky in a situation or uncomfortable about the topics that are being brought up at like Thanksgiving dinner, or maybe an uncomfortable topic with your kids or with your significant other, I got you. Stay tuned.
Life is a winding road, no telling where it goes. Driving through days and nights, won't stop for traffic light.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. My name is Joelle Fawcett, and I am your host and the founder of the Soul Method podcast, where our mission is to be your guide to heal from the past, be at peace in the present, create a future you love. And I am so excited to be coming to you from the new Soul Studios. We have renovated our space, and it is awesome to have a space all of our own to do the things we do here. And I am excited you are with me today. And we are going to be getting into this topic. And I know that the title is a really bold claim. Okay. I know that. How to never have your boundaries crossed again. What is that, right? So let's get into it. And honestly, this episode has been inspired by a lot of things that have been happening around me recently. And it's, there's a handful of things that have just been on my heart and I really want to share with you guys. So I'm going to say something right now that a lot of you might argue with originally. And this is just my belief. And this is it. I don't believe that boundaries, what we think of as boundaries today, actually exist. I do not think that they are real. And it's like, oh my gosh, what do you mean by that? We're going to get into it. But what we think of as boundaries today often are not boundaries at all. Most of the time, boundaries in our culture today are a form of either codependence or avoidance. Okay. Now, what I think we are looking to achieve when we say, I'm setting a boundary or this is my boundary, what I think we are really looking for is healthy engagement with other people and how to make a healthy request of someone, which is very different than this cultural codependency that has really kind of come up in our culture over the past 5 to 10 years. And I'm seeing it a lot today. So these boundaries in our culture are very different than healthy, authentic requests and healthy engagement. And if you've listened to the podcast from its inception, you've heard me talk about this before, where requests are based on emotional emptiness. Okay, my own validity, my own state of peace is not dependent on you accepting or denying a request I have. Okay. And based on how anyone responds to a request that I have of them, then I have a choice as to how I continue to engage with them. And that type of interaction with people is honestly a really amazing way to live your life, because at that point, you are completely in charge of your own internal state. In a sense, you become bulletproof. There's very little that can happen in the world around you in your relationships, in your associations, there's very little that can happen that would set you off, that would emotionally sway you one way or another. And you can walk through life very stable and very secure and in control of your own sense of peace. And honestly, it's an amazing way to live. And no one's perfect, right? Everyone is human. We all have days where we're more or less susceptible to what's going on around us. But as you do this work, as I've been doing this work over the past, 5 years, it has been absolutely incredible to witness my own state of being becoming more and more and more within my own groundedness. And so that ultimately is the goal, the unreachable goal, but the goal, and what we're going to talk about today. So let's talk about what we don't want first, right? And kind of decipher this whole thing of cultural codependence, because I've talked about it before. It is a little bit one of my pet peeves. And I talk about codependence a lot because it is rampant in our society. And it's very challenging to have healthy relationships if you are unable to identify codependent habits. All right. I would even venture to say that it is impossible to have healthy relationships if you're unable to identify codependent habits. And unfortunately, what I see over and over and over again with friends and my associates, and even with our children, is because we pass these habits on, right? We teach our children how to have relationships. And I see time and time again, because we can't identify what is a healthy relationship and what isn't, what is a proper way to engage with someone and what is a codependent way to engage with someone. Instead, we keep just repeating. We repeat, and we wind up having the same relationship with multiple people, whether we rinse and repeat familial relationships, whether we rinse and repeat romantic relationships. These patterns and habits just keep happening because it is the way that we are engaging in that relationship that is the creation point. It is never about the other person. It is always about how you're engaging. And if you're engaging from a codependent place, it is always going to just rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. So, what I see today in society that is very special. And you'll know me, you know that I am a very blunt person. I say it as it is. So I may say some things in this podcast episode today that you don't like. And I'm just going to throw it out there that it's okay. I'm not here to make everybody happy. It's actually not my responsibility. I am here to speak truth from a loving and kind place. I do this because I love people and I want everyone to have the knowledge that I have been gifted with over the past several years. And so that's why I'm here. So in today's culture, more often than not, boundaries look like this. We are taught to set a boundary so that we can feel loved, respected, worthy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And most of the time we talk about setting boundaries where you all need to change. You all need to do this or say this or be this so that I can feel whatever it is. Right. And a lot of times this happens on social media a lot, and you guys will see this now. Where someone will say, like, all right, everybody, this is my new boundary, or this is my new way of engaging with the world. And everyone around is going to now be asked to treat me a certain way because that's how I feel loved, how I feel worthy. Now, there is a way to do this where it's a genuine request, right? Where it's like, hey, I'm feeling really safe and secure in myself. I don't really need you to treat me a certain way. But if you choose not to, I'm just not going to respond to that or I'm not going to engage. And that's fine. That's an unloaded person engaging in a healthy way. All right. That's a person who doesn't need anything from you. Most of the time, it's not like that. Most of the time, someone's own sense of love, peace, worthiness, happiness, all that stuff is set in a boundary on the responsibility of someone else. Right. And here's the thing in our lives, we cannot heal from the outside in. Can't. You cannot do it. There is no thing out there that you can buy. There is no person out there who will love you. There is no child you will have. There is no diet plan you're going to find. There is no pronoun someone will use that is going to heal what's going on for you inside. Okay? All healing starts from the inside out. So when we're setting these boundaries, so often I see in our culture people wanting to fix the world around them in an attempt to heal what's going on with them internally. And I know as a life coach, as through the research that I've done, that will never work. There is no amount of times your mother or father, your sibling, your best friend, your partner can tell you that they love you, so you will feel loved. There is no amount of weight you can lose, money you can make, things you can own that will make you feel worthy. There is no amount of flags, voting, picketing lines, pronoun changes, surgeries, any of those things. There's no amount of any of those things that will make you feel validated in your beliefs. Okay, the validation, the worthiness, the love, the happiness, it all comes from inside of you. And so that's where the work has to be. And once that clicks in, once we're able to let go of all the junk, and it is possible, I promise you. I promise you it's possible. I am sitting here as proof that this work can and will change your life if you get committed to it. Once you're able to let go of the junk and shift internally, everything outside of you will reflect your inside. That's the moment when you become the master of your life. Now, most of the time, we do this, right? We do this like I'm going to set a healthy boundary. If you're listening on audio, I'm rolling my eyes. Most of the time, we do this thing where we dance around boundaries or set boundaries to protect ourselves from actually having to deal with the hurt and the pain that we are carrying inside of ourselves. There is this amazing book. I'm holding it up right now. If you're on audio, it is called Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. If you have not read this book, I highly, highly recommend it. And in this book, he talks about this topic, and this is what he says. Ultimately, if you protect yourself perfectly, you will never grow. All of your habits and idiosyncrasies will stay the same. Life becomes stagnant when people protect their stored issues. People say things like, we don't talk about that subject around your father. There are all these rules about things that we are not supposed to do or happen outside because they could cause disturbance inside. Living like this always allows for very little spontaneous joy, enthusiasm, and excitement for life. Most people just go from day to day protecting themselves and making sure nothing goes too wrong. At the end of the day, when someone asks, "How was your day?" a normal response is, "Not too bad," or "I'll survive." What is that telling you about their view of life? They see life as a threat. A good day means you made it through without getting hurt. The longer you live like this, the more closed off you become. So I'm hoping you're starting to see this now, how we tend to rearrange our lives. We rearrange how we engage with people to protect ourselves from ever truly having to deal with what's going on inside of ourselves. And the moment we get too close, most of the time is the moment arguments happen, the moment we feel so much anxiety or anger or fear or guilt come up that we experience panic attacks, we react out of emotion, which often could be an explosive sort of event, or we might do the opposite. We might implode and just shut down. And unfortunately, in our culture, there are millions of books. You can find them anywhere. There's millions of books that describe in really great detail how to set boundaries and essentially protect yourself from ever having to actually heal. Right. Now, prime examples of this, if you've ever heard yourself or someone around you saying this type of thing, these are prime examples of these boundaries that we set to avoid having to heal. Things like, "I can't date someone who has drama in their family." "I don't talk to my ex husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever. I don't talk to my ex. I need my friends, family, etc., to respect my whatever it is, sexual orientation, pronouns, religious beliefs, positions, etc., etc." We don't talk about like family dinners or with that friend. And let's really think about this for a minute, because this is kind of an expectation in society. Like, we don't talk about certain topics because people might what? Like, these are literally the most important topics of our lives. And as a culture and a society, we have become so incredibly emotionally unstable. So, needing everyone around us to agree with us that we can't have a conversation about them in public. These are things like sexuality, politics, identity, money, faith, religion, hot topics, abortion, gun rights, immigration. Literally, the most important things of our time and in your life, the things that are the authentic expression of your being. We now have created a culture and are raising our children in a society where we don't talk about it because we're afraid. Doesn't that bother you? How do you feel about that? Like, really sit with that for a minute and feel it. How do you feel about that? Now, obviously, the question to ask would be, what are we afraid of? Okay. First off, most people will admit that they're afraid of someone disagreeing with them Or they'll say something like, well, I don't want to offend anybody. I don't want to offend anybody. But I think that's total bullshit, to be honest with you. You're not afraid of offending someone. We are afraid that should someone not agree with us or say something potentially inflammatory, that it will touch a hurt inside of us. And we won't know how to handle that when it happens. You're not afraid of offending anybody. You're trying to protect yourself from healing. If you're listening to audio, I'm smiling. And I'm saying this out of love to everyone who is listening. You may think not having these conversations is about them. It's not. The only reason you won't have these conversations is because of you. My coach has said to me so many times, and I really want you to get this image in your head. She has said this to me so many times, and I always go back to this. If you have a cup, I have a cup right here. It's full of seltzer water. I'm holding it up. If you have a cup and you fill it with juice, you fill it with water, imagine a cup in your head, fill it up with whatever your favorite beverage is. And then someone comes along and tips the cup. What's going to happen? The liquid is going to spill out, right? It's not the other person's fault that you kept the liquid in, right? You're the one who put it in there. You're the one who's storing it up in your heart and in your body. You're the one who's refusing to deal with the junk. The same way I was so stubborn. Oh my God, let me tell you. It took me many years to start to unpack all of this stuff, right? We're very stubborn. Our conscious and subconscious minds go to great lengths to keep us from the seemingly scary concept of healing our own emotional wounds. When you have boundaries that protect you from healing, you're walking around with a cup full of juice into every situation. And that juice in there is your emotional triggers. That is your childhood leftovers. That is your false belief systems, et cetera, et cetera. You're walking around with a cup filled up with this junk saying, don't spill it, don't spill it, don't spill it, don't spill it. And then when they inevitably do spill the cup or spill the juice, we then blame them for doing it, right? So an example of this, I know I'm talking in metaphor, but an example of this that we can kind of get into, like, all right, let's say that really, really simple one. You're someone who struggled with body image growing up. And you struggled with it and you were critical of yourself, and a worthiness belief system, a negative worthiness belief system is buried in you, buried in your heart. And honestly, you'd be hard pressed to find a human being on the face of the planet that doesn't have a worthiness negative belief system buried in their heart, right? Something around, am I worthy? I'm not worthy. Can I be worthy of whatever it is, right? So let's say you're that person and then you're out and about. Maybe you're hanging out with some associates after work and someone makes a comment about what you're wearing. Now, they didn't intend anything by it, right? Someone who has an empty cup. I actually don't have any empty cups right here. This is kind of empty. As someone who has an empty cup There's nothing in there to spill out. That person laughs about it. Someone who has a full cup, that's going to tip and fall. And then if you're the person with the negative, am I worthy belief systems, you're going to be upset with that person for tipping. Does that make sense? Right? So most of the time, what we wind up doing with boundaries is we set them around ourselves to avoid that cup ever tipping, to avoid ever having to deal with and process through these things that we all experience in life, right? I've said this before and I'll say it again. No one gets through childhood without trauma. Okay. We live in an imperfect world. We have imperfect parents and an imperfect culture. No one gets through childhood without experiencing some kind of trauma. And unfortunately, what we are taught to do / our nature is to do is to just start filling up the cup with the trauma as we go through life. We keep swallowing it down, our cup fills up, and we aren't taught how to process through and get rid of that junk. Because it's when this is empty, when your cup is empty, that is when nothing outside can have control, because there's nothing to have control of. You're not emotionally void, but there's nothing there that can rattle you. There's nothing you're trying to hide, right? When you get to a point in the process where there's no longer two of you, there's no longer the you on the outside that is protecting the you on the inside. When those merge because you process through and they become the same person, that's when you can engage authentically with people. I've said it again on the podcast many times as well. The only way out, right? The way out of our patterns, the way out of the junk, the way out of repeating, the way out of negative relationships is through what you've stored. To go through the pain, we have to go through the anger, we have to go through the hurt to release it. Right. You have to be willing to peel off the Band-Aid. More Band-Aids, more boundaries aren't going to help. You have to be willing to look at your shadow. And a great metaphor to think about this is like a trash can, right? Very simple metaphor. Let's say there's a bunch of rotten food in the trash can, like we tend to store up rotten stuff inside of us. You can add as many air fresheners to that room as you want. That room will never stop having a foul smell until you take the goddamn trash out. Okay? So that's what we have to do. At an internal level, we have to process through and remove the negativity. And most of the time, you'll see this portrayed in movies, on TV, you'll see it between your friends and your family. Most of the time when we have arguments today, it is not one person talking to another person. Most of the time, what's happening is one person is responding out of trauma and the other person is responding out of trauma. So there is no actual argument happening. It's trauma talking to trauma. So most of the time, it is one person's emotional spillover. Like the cup gets tipped, their emotions start, right? We don't know how to handle it. So all the stuff starts to come out, the juice starts to spill. And then the same thing happens with the other person. It becomes you tip my cup, I'm going to tip your cup. I'm going to send this jab at you, this sarcastic remark, whatever it is. And then that person starts reacting out of the filled cup. And so most arguments today All it is spillage talking to each other. And that's why most of the time in typical arguments or conversations that we see or hear today, there's no way to do that productively. There's absolutely no way. And I tell a lot of my clients, the moment you get emotionally to a certain point, the best thing you can do is walk away. The best thing you can do is be done. Because in that moment, when there's so much spillage coming from both people, there is no way to create healing. Now, this is completely different. Like how I started, this is completely different than having an authentic engagement with somebody and making requests. And ultimately, we want to know, what is the difference, right? Because the title of this podcast is Never to Have Your Boundaries Crossed Again. So here's the answer. You never want to have your boundaries crossed again? Don't set boundaries. Stop setting boundaries the way that our culture teaches you how to have boundaries. Work on you. Unpack all of the stuff inside of you. I highly recommend a coach if you've had a lot of life, if you've been through a lot. Unpack you, and you will never need to ask anyone to respect some exterior boundary, because on the inside, you'll be completely secure within your own sense of peace and joy. Right? And how do you know, right? How do we know what the difference is? Because don't get it twisted with the sense where, oh, Joelle doesn't set boundaries. I don't set boundaries the way that our culture sets boundaries, but I absolutely choose very intentionally how I interact with people. And I am not perfect. No one is. And the biggest difference is when I am choosing engagement with someone, or I'm even making a request of them, I'm not protecting a part of myself that's hurt. I'm engaging from a place of an authentic yes or an authentic no. So a really great example of this that happened recently. Joe and I are engaged. I'm so excited. And I actually asked him to marry me the Friday before Christmas. And because of that little shift, a lot of people had a lot of opinions and a lot of things to say about our engagement. So obviously people are excited. They went, what happened? This, the ring, this, that, and thing, right? And I had a lot of people say a lot of things to me about asking my now fiance to marry me. And, Joe didn't think one way or another of it. I'm one of the things I'm most proud of in my life is the relationship that I have with my fiance. And Joe is equally excited, and he didn't think one way or another of it. He's thrilled to be planning a wedding with me. And everyone else had different reactions. Some people were excited, some people were intrigued, and some people said some interesting things. Some people were surprised. And here's how I know that I have no junk around my relationship or how I chose to do that. It's because I don't need anyone else to be happy about me asking Joe to marry me. I'm happy about it. And so with the people who felt that that was very untraditional and very different, or maybe were a little confused, I had all the space in the world to be like, oh, looks like you want to talk about, what's going on for you. Because again, I don't need anyone to respect my choices or praise me or anything like that to feel a sense of satisfaction and joy within myself. If someone outrightly is doing things that are not within my alignment and how I want to engage with people, I will make a request of that. to shift or change or pivot. If they refuse, I'll probably disengage with them. But at that point, that's their choice. So you'll know when you're setting a line out of engagement instead of a boundary out of codependence, when your sense of emotional peace and security is dependent on that boundary being met by the people around you. One of the biggest clues to this is if you feel like you have to make a public announcement or have a conversation with people about it. I always know that if you need to go into a family dinner and make a grand announcement about your new boundary, you're being codependent. All right. You don't need to have any conversations with anyone about it. You need to deal with you. Your boundaries are not there to keep you safe from a scary or toxic world. Okay? True boundaries are designed to be a reflection of your authentic yes and your authentic. So I know we covered a lot in this podcast episode. I'm so excited to be in my new space, and I would love to hear your thoughts. How are you? What's going on for you? I have openings for clients. I would love to work with you if you are interested in digging into some of this in your own life, a one-on-one level. You can connect with me by hitting me up at the SoL Method Facebook page, which is the SoL Method Yoga, or you can email me. My email is Joelle, JOELLE, at the.SoL.method.com. I hope you all are having an amazing week. I'll see you next time.